A developing story tonight in the Bay Area. The latest from YouTube headquarters, where multiple people were shot this afternoon.
Until we can have a wall and proper security, we're going to be guarding our border with the military.
President Trump adds a new element to his immigration plan by promising to get the military involved.
You never know what's going to be that tipping point to make someone stay in the Navy.
Can a golden ticket help the Navy retain its men and women? The program that allows sailors to return to duty after a year of civilian life. And those who were with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his final moments reflect on his death 50 years later. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. One person is dead and 4 others are wounded after a shooting this afternoon at YouTube's Bay Area headquarters. San Bruno police were first called to the scene around 12:45. They say the shooter was a woman who took her own life. Police have not identified her or any of the victims. Workers at the YouTube campus were evacuated and some were patted down by police. A spokesperson for a nearby hospital says one of the victims is in critical condition. President Donald Trump says he may use the U.S. military to help secure the border with Mexico. The comments were made at the White House while hosting leaders from the Baltic nations.
We don't have laws. We have catch and release. You catch and then you immediately release, and people come back years later for a court case, except they virtually never come back. So we are preparing for the military to secure our border between Mexico and the United States. We have a meeting on it in a little while with General Mattis and everybody, and I think that it's something we have to do.
The president didn't give any details on where U.S. military would be sent or when this would happen. The comments were made as the president urges Mexico to stop migrants from Honduras who are traveling north. National Guard troops have been used for border security in the past, most recently in 2006. A San Diego church says it will become a sanctuary for immigrants facing deportation.
For your people are my people, your people are mine.
Dozens of faith and community leaders joined together in unity and song at First Unitarian Universalist Church in Hillcrest today. They're vowing to protect and stand with immigrants who are working to fight their deportation cases in court. Kathleen Owens is pastor of the 700-member church. She says being a sanctuary is a tool that slows down the process of deportation.
We can house one person or a small family at a time and be with them as their case goes through court. Hopefully it would end well, and when they leave, then we would be open for another.
Owens is urging other congregations to join their efforts. She's also calling on the San Diego County Supervisors to be humanitarian and reject becoming part of a lawsuit against California's sanctuary laws. However, Supervisor Diane says she's optimistic that San Diego County will side with the Trump administration. During an interview on Fox News Channel, Jacobs said, "I'm hopeful that my board in San Diego County will join Orange County in their fight against this really bad law in California." Jacobs says she expects at least 3 of the 5 board members will support her push when the board takes up the issue later this month. A move today by the Environmental Protection Agency could start a legal fight over California's right to set its own vehicle emission standards. Administrator Scott Pruitt announced the agency will begin a review process that could scale back federal guidelines set in 2011 and 2012. The EPA is urging California to go along with any changes. However, California has set higher standards that have been adopted by 12 other states.
I think the focus in the past has been on making manufacturers in Detroit, making manufacturers in various parts of the country make cars that people aren't going to buy. And if our focus should be on making cars that people purchase actually more efficient. To have arbitrary percentages of our fleet made up of vehicles that aren't going to be purchased, that defeats the very purpose of what the CAFE standards are supposed to address.
The Pacific Coast Collaborative, which includes California's Governor Jerry Brown, put out a joint statement defending California's emission standards, saying these standards have cleared the haze and smog from our cities and reversed decades of chronic air pollution problems while putting more money in consumers' pockets. KPBS continues to fact-check campaign mailers in our series, Show Us Your Mailers. Tonight, we're looking at one calling for testing of all rape kits. KPBS reporter Jade Hindman has more.
So on this mailer, District Attorney candidate Genevieve Jones-Wright says she wants to bring justice to all victims. One way she plans to do it is through testing every rape kit. And that prompted us to check the status of untested rape kits in the county and also begged the question, does the district attorney have the authority to ensure every rape kit is tested? Untested rape kits are stored here at the San Diego County Crime Lab, where Mike Grubb is the director. When asked if the DA can ensure all rape kits are tested, he says it's complicated. Each law enforcement agency that falls under the DA's scope ultimately decides what happens to each kit. Then there are barriers.
In non-investigative report cases, we are legally bound not to examine them until the victim gives us the go-ahead to do so. There's also cases where the victim has recanted the case.
In a recent attempt to get San Diego County's decade worth of untested rape kits tested, current interim DA Summer Stephan says she worked to remove some of the barriers. She says she pulled $1 million from the county public safety group budget and hired an out-of-state company to start testing the more than 900 rape kits that have been sitting in storage across the county. That testing began earlier this year, but so far, less than half have been sent off to that lab. And she says she's still trying to get more funding. Stephan, who is running against Jones-Wright, says a federal recommendation from the Department of Justice that all rape kits be tested prompted her push.
It's been a constant drumbeat for 10 years. And, you know, we do the best we can given our backlogs and our priorities system. But, yeah, why now?
Why now is a question he can't answer. Jade Hindman, KPBS News.
A San Diego assemblywoman is co-sponsoring a bill that would more narrowly define when police can use deadly force. Right now, law enforcement in California can use deadly force when facing a reasonable threat. Shirley Weber's bill would only allow deadly force if there's no other option. The bill is partly in response to the recent shooting of an unarmed man in Sacramento.
It's not just a recent thing. The issue of African Americans being injured and killed by police officers is a long history in this country. And so it's not that the pendulum is just swinging, it's stuck in one spot. And so what we're trying to do is move it back to where it needs to be.
162 people were shot and killed by law enforcement in California last year. About half of them were armed with guns. Tomorrow marks 50 years since the civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in Memphis, Tennessee. AP reporter Robert Ray spoke with those who were working with Dr. King during his final days.
On February 1st, 1968, 2 Memphis sanitation workers were crushed when a garbage truck compactor malfunctioned, sparking a strike by about 1,300 black workers, followed by a march that descended into violence. A march led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Two months later, on the morning of April 3rd, King, who was feeling ill, returned to Memphis, where he delivered an impromptu speech.
It was such a powerful message that many people thought that he knew this would be the last sermon he'd preach.
Jesse Jackson knew King's oratory. These were words he'd not heard before.
I've been to the mountaintop. I may not get there. I remember ministers, men were crying. It was an interesting kind of dynamic.
The next day, April 4th, 1968, Dr. King and his associates spent much of the day in meetings. That night, they were running late for dinner.
So I was coming across the stairway, across the courtyard. And he said, Jesse, you're late. It's like you know you're late.
And I said, you know, you had a fever yesterday. You probably ought to get a coat. And he said, oh, do I need a coat? And he sort of lifted his head like that to sort of looking at the weather.
He turns, that's a doctor, pow, bullet.
And hit right at the tip of his chin and severed his spinal cord.
I remember Reverend Abernathy coming saying, back up, this is my dearest friend. Martin, you can't give up, don't leave us now.
The bullet had knocked him out of his shoes. And I ran up, and there he was laying in his own blood with his whole spinal cord exposed.
Clara Esther, a college student who had been marching alongside the sanitation workers, had gone to the hotel for dinner. She saw King and heard what sounded like a truck backfiring.
Blood is all around his head and neck area. And his eyes are open with almost a pleasant expression on his face.
At 7:05 p.m., King was pronounced dead at St. Joseph's Hospital. College student John Billings was a surgical assistant on the night shift.
I walked over and they had pulled the sheet back, and there he was, looked like Dr. King, except his neck was all, it hit him on the right side, and all this was gone pretty much.
Andrew Young says the memory of the man he considered his brother, lying in blood, has never left him. The recent marches across the country have made the former activist, diplomat, and politician feel nostalgic and inspired.
I really sat at home alone and fighting back tears and just, listening to these young people, so articulate, so visionary, so confident. And I thought that Dr. King's message that unearned suffering is redemptive.
But to lay there with his eyes open, looking toward heaven, he had seen the promised land. And he may not get there with us, but he promised that we as a people will see the promised land.
King died at the age of 39. Robert Ray, The Associated Press, Atlanta.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the questions raised by President Trump's wide-ranging public statements, from tech giant Amazon to the U.S.-Mexico border. That's coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The region's largest water wholesaler is abandoning a plan to build 2 large water-moving tunnels under the Sacramento Delta. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says a new, smaller-scale plan would actually cost local residents more.
The Metropolitan Water District is dumping its support for the 2-tunnel California water fix because they couldn't cultivate enough support from the state's large agricultural districts. Now, the Met will ask its board to approve $5.3 billion for a 1-tunnel plan. That's $1 billion more than the board approved for the 2-tunnel plan last year because fewer people are willing to pay. The San Diego County Water Authority's Dennis Cushman told KPBS last fall that San Diego water users will pay if Met approves money for a tunnel project.
That's a big issue for our ratepayers in San Diego because ratepayers in San Diego pay about 25% of whatever Met spends money on. So it's one of the largest potential capital project commitments in Metropolitan's history.
The tunnel plan is designed to move water from the northern end of the Delta to a pumping plant in the south. Supporters say the state could draw water without putting so much pressure on the Delta's endangered fish species. Critics, however, argue the plan is too expensive and is just a move of Northern California water to Southern California. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
With plans to increase the number of ships, the Navy is suddenly looking for new ways to keep sailors, even giving them a chance to leave for a year and come back. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has the story.
Now, the Trump administration wants to grow from 290 to 355 ships. Suddenly, the Navy is putting the brakes on retirement incentives. Instead, It's looking for creative ways to keep people from leaving.
I can tell you right now, with the type of growth that we have, it's almost hard to have enough retention. And so we're basically keeping every sailor who wants to stay in.
Captain Vince Seegers handles retention programs for the Navy and says he's trying to meet an ambitious target.
Right now, our retention goals are pretty high, and probably higher that Chief of Naval Personnel would say that we can attain. But we're going to try to do the best we can.
Flush with cash, the Navy just released a new round of re-enlistment bonuses for fighter pilots, helicopter pilots, and mechanics.
You never know what's going to be that tipping point to make someone stay in the Navy. It could be money, it could be a program, it could be as simple as getting the orders they want.
Or maybe it's a chance to test drive civilian life for a year. Beginning in April, the Navy will issue golden tickets. Sailors who qualify can leave and come back after a year and resume their service right where they left off. The idea was first tried by the Coast Guard. Seegers says the Navy hopes to entice sailors and officers who might have second thoughts about leaving or who find civilian life isn't everything they thought it would be.
But in so many cases, and I have a lot of friends, some people regret that decision.
Still, it's hard to turn someone around once they're ready to leave. Mackley Marion is a logistics specialist in San Diego. She's taking a class called Reboot with other Navy women who are about to leave the military. Marion will reach 20 years in July when she can retire with full benefits. That's exactly what she plans to do.
Nothing they could say to me would make me stay. I've been grateful for the 20 years that they have permitted me to serve in the Navy, and I think that's long enough for me.
Her command has already asked her to stay.
It's very humbling when they want you and they try at any cost, like stay, but again, sometimes family, like the other female family, needs come first.
Her husband is a bomb technician. When their deployments overlapped, the couple saw each other for only 3 weeks in 2016. They have 4 kids from 6 years old to 16.
Since my husband and I are both military, it's just time for one of us to be here now that the kids are older.
The Golden Ticket is part of a series of ideas under the banner Sailor 2025, designed to make Navy life easier. It tries to stagger deployments for married couples. A separate program allows sailors to take longer breaks in active duty service, which might help with college or family obligations. Madeline Rulin joined the Navy at 27. 4 years later, she's ready for the next chapter in her life. She's practicing her interviewing skills and preparing her resume. Could the Navy talk her into staying?
Maybe. maybe they would, but I already have decided that I am going to move forward, and that is the life for me.
Along with the pride of serving the country, traveling the globe is one of the Navy's biggest selling points. Sailors say eventually the unpredictability of long deployments makes it difficult to continue. And finding a job doesn't seem like quite as big a concern.
I think I'm just more excited than concerned, because I know there's a lot of companies out there that are looking for veterans with a really good, strong leadership.
The Navy knows it's competing in a tight job market. It's not the only employer hiring, so it's hoping that at least a few more of its best performing sailors will at least give it one more look before leaving for good. For KPBS News, I'm Steve Walsh.
Mild weather will stick around for a few more days before we see another chance of rain. Aaron Calandra has details in tonight's forecast.
It was another beautiful day here in Paradise. Not much happening here in San Diego County. Some morning fog and clouds, but afternoon, beautiful and sunny. Let's take a look at the satellite. Nothing is going on here, although this weekend we do expect to see a couple of showers, some rain across the region. But for now, everything's pretty quiet. Look at all this cloud coverage here over the Pacific. We do have a system that's moving into the north of us, and that's going to bring some rain slowly pushing down to the south. So for tonight, 57 degrees, increasing clouds, and the interior areas, they're going to be pretty quiet. Ramona, 45, Alpine, 46, Borrego Springs at 61, and Chula Vista, 54 degrees tonight for overnight lows. Tomorrow we have high pressure in place. It's going to be warm and dry, pretty uneventful for everyone here in the Southwest. We need some rain because it's awfully dry, so not happening on Wednesday, but again Saturday could see a chance of that. On tomorrow, It's going to be a bit cloudy, especially in the morning time again along the coast. Oceanside at 65, San Diego 67, Alpine reaching 74, and Mount Laguna 65. Clearer there in the mountains and also in the deserts. Along the coast on Wednesday, we're at 65, and then slightly warmer Thursday and Friday. Saturday, well, here come the showers. 65 degrees. It's going to be drier by Sunday. In the interior areas, again, slowly cooling down over the next couple of days with those showers moving into the area on Saturday. Again, you might need the umbrella. Drier by Sunday. And in the mountains, it's going to be a bit cooler as well throughout the week. Saturday, 59 degrees. Could see a shower in the evening hours. And in the deserts, we don't expect any showers. Unfortunately, it's going to be dry and sunny, although Saturday we will see a couple of clouds lingering. Temperatures on Saturday drop to 84. Other than that, it is awfully warm in the deserts. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Ebony, back to you.
KPBS viewers see her every weeknight anchoring PBS NewsHour. Judy Woodruff recently visited our partner station KQED in San Francisco, where she talked about covering the Trump administration, working with the late Gwen Ifill, and what sets PBS apart from other networks.
You know, you've been covering Washington since 1977 when President Jimmy Carter was in office. You've seen many administrations. How would you assess the political climate today compared to what you've seen?
Well, how much time do we have?
Not nearly enough.
You know, people often ask me, how do you compare this? Is this anything like other presidents? And the fact is, I've covered Democrats, I covered Carter, Clinton, Obama, I've covered Republicans, Reagan, both Bushes. I mean, and now Donald Trump. Donald Trump stands alone. He was not a politician. He was not in public policy. He didn't have a background in government of any kind. And he's brought this unique personality, his show business background, his reality TV background, his business background. He's a completely different kind of president. And we're all, you know, we've had to fasten our seatbelts.
During this administration, the term fake news has become very commonplace. Disinformation, there's a lot of that going on out there. What challenges do those things present to you in terms of trying to do your job every day?
There are enormous challenges that come with it, because what has happened is it's now been planted in the minds of many Americans that they can't trust much of the news media. And it's not that the news media has ever been perfect, and media reporters make mistakes, but not on a whole-scale level, and not at a dimension that this president and others around him have portrayed. The reporters I know in Washington who cover the White House, who cover the Congress, by and large, are there to do their job. They're there to report the news, to get it across in as accurate a way as possible. And so this now new charge that's flying around every day where people say, well, we don't know whether we can believe you or not, has put all of us on the defensive, and I think needlessly so, but we have to now take that into consideration. We are now called on more than ever to be accurate, to make sure we provide context, accurate context, that we don't make any mistakes, because our credibility in the end is all we have. I know we at the NewsHour take that very seriously.
And you and the late Gwen Ifill became the first all-female network anchor team in 2013, and we were so fortunate to have Gwen Ifill here just a couple of years ago. We all miss her. If you could take us back to that moment, what was that like, though, when that announcement was made? It was such a milestone for women journalists like me.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Gwen and I had to look at each other and practically pinch ourselves because we were part of history.
Good evening. I'm Judy Woodruff.
And I'm Gwen Ifill. We were the first two women to anchor together a national news broadcast. It was both a natural thing to happen, and it was a remarkable thing to happen, to have two women sitting there night after night, and it was just an enormous privilege for me. I mean, Gwen was just is somebody who will live forever. I think her legacy will live on forever in news. She was not only a great journalist, she was a remarkable friend, larger-than-life personality, which I know you saw.
Great sense of humor.
We miss her every day, and one of the reasons we are determined now to work so hard to do a good job at the NewsHour and to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable is to live up to Gwen's legacy.
And in the modern news cycle now, partly due to social media, but partly just due to the digital landscape overall, is now more frenetic than ever. The chase for online clicks and the chase for ratings is more intense. How is NewsHour's approach different from what everybody else is trying to do?
It's important that people watch us, but what we don't do, Twee, is we don't worry about how many eyeballs at this minute and the next minute and the next minute, which is what our commercial friends are doing. They have to worry about ratings. It's how they make their
money.
living, their money. We have the great luxury, the great ability to sit there every morning and throughout the day and look at what are the most important stories of the day, what should we be covering, what do the American people need to know, in our humble opinion, and how can we best cover it? And that's how we make our decision about what to cover, not to be driven by the silly story of the moment or whatever's getting a lot of clicks, but to think about what matters here and what do we owe people time and information to cover. That's what our job is.
Judy Woodruff with the PBS NewsHour, thank you.
Thank you, Twee. It's just been great to be here.
Now, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. We've reported on the pushback to dockless bikes in places like Little Italy. On Morning Edition, we profile one community that's embracing the bikes. And on Midday Edition, how the Vista Unified School District is expanding its school choice options to attract students. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.